The 9 things that the Enneagram types get wrong about their own lives. I'm gonna start off with the most common types, the most common limiting beliefs and falsehoods you will come across in the world in general, but probably also with you. Alright, so I'm gonna jump in and start with everything's fine. So that is the type 9. That is a common, very, very common defense mechanism of type 9. You can also say it is strongly related to dissociation, to getting numb, emotional numbness, to zoning out. And at the same time, it is not acknowledging that there is an issue or that there is a problem. This is also very much the case because type 9s are positive types. They just don't want to acknowledge certain issues, certain problems. And it depends on the situation. Generally, it's not good if you always live your life like this, because if you always, in general with your life, just say everything is fine, and you not just say it to other people, but you even mean it to yourself, then you are not going to address certain issues or problems that need to be addressed. Now, of course, if I want to put it more into balance, they're going to be things in life that you just have to accept, and where you just have to be like, okay, it's fine. Also, sometimes you just need to sort of think of life as, okay, I will be able to figure it out. So you will still need some kind of hope or some kind of positive mindset, and that's more the healthy aspect of 9. But the unhealthy aspect of 9 is where it's really, you say that everything is fine, everything's acceptable, everything is peaceful, in quotation marks, everything is fine with me. But the truth is, usually nothing is fine. Whenever a type 9 tends to say everything is fine in their life, oftentimes it's the exact opposite, that nothing is fine. So if you have this, you really need to work on that. Okay, the next one that is very, very common is everything's a threat, everything is worrisome, everything is a disaster. I kind of group it all together. Also, you could say everything is a conspiracy. So this is type 6. I would mostly summarize it as everything is a threat. So for type 6, nothing is certain. When they're unhealthy and when this is their main mindset, nothing is certain, nothing is safe, everything can be a threat. And I also want to distinguish this from the anxious attachment styles. You might know about the attachment style theories. There's anxious and avoidant attachments. Just because you have, let's say, certain trust issues due to perhaps bad experiences in the past with certain relationships does not necessarily mean that you are a type 6 or that your trust issues are type 6 related. However, if just generally in life, even outside of relationships or just with everything in life, you tend to have this perspective that everything is a threat or everything is something to worry about, or everything could be like a conspiracy, you just cannot trust anything, everything is rising up your suspicion, then most likely you are operating from an unhealthy type 6 mindset, and you also need to fix this. Okay, another one that is very common, everything's great. And that is type 3. Type 3, as you might know, they really like to lay it on thick when it comes to how great their life is, how great they are, how oftentimes ambitious, how successful they are, how everything is up to par, awesome. From the outside, it's very much image-based. And you can also see that a lot on certain social media sites when people are like really obsessed with portraying how great everything is and how great they are. And once again, it's similar to type 9 in the sense that when they say everything is great, or when they show off as if everything is great, usually it's the exact opposite. Usually everything is subpar or not up to their satisfaction or dissatisfying or just not great at all. Or they just try to cover it up by showing how great everything is, how great it is. This is very much an unhealthy type 3 thing. So if this is something you are struggling with, you are probably currently dealing with type 3 issues. Okay, the next one. Everything must go my way. That is unhealthy type 8. So I was about to say everything must be under my control, but I realized a lot of people misunderstand the controlling nature of type 8. Other kinds of personality types can also be controlling in their own ways. So, and also when you want to have control over yourself and over your life, sometimes it's really just not an 8 thing at all. It might just be that you don't trust people, for example, and that you are very avoidant of people. So it's not always an 8 thing. Everything must go your way. That is an 8 thing. So this is where the control, how the control gets exerted. Also 8s being extroverts, in my opinion, also based just on the theory. 8s, when they're unhealthy, they are the bossy people, right? When they're unhealthy, everything has to go according to what they want, what they think is best. And usually it is tied up into their control. But once again, I don't want to go too much into controlling stuff because it can be misunderstood. But yeah, everything has to go according to what they think is best. And they often exert this control over, the people in their lives. But it's not just with a romantic partner. It extends to family members. Usually 8s are also bosses at work. It's very common because it goes very well with that kind of attitude, right? And it goes very well with type 8's personality. So many bosses you encounter in a lot of jobs will be 8s or have an 8 wing. And when they're unhealthy, it all has to go according what they want. It's very hard to convince them of something else to do. If they don't agree with it, they're just gonna be like, nope. They're like bulldozers in that way. It has to be my way and my way only. And I don't care what you think. I don't care what you feel. That's also the thing with 8. They don't care what you feel, what you think. It has to go their way. They have to be, in control, you could say. But it has to go according to what they think is best, what they want. And they are not going to take no for an answer. And that's like when it's really, really unhealthy. So if you are struggling with this, you're probably type 8 or you have some kind of type 8 problem at the moment. Now another type that goes a bit against this one, but still kind of connected. Everything's for you. So that is unhealthy type 2, okay? This is also a very extroverted focus, you could say. Everything's for you. Type 2s are often called givers, helpers. Type 2 is overly focused on doing everything for something outside of themselves. Something that is about other people, other things. It often is not for them. They often pride themselves on being selfless, but the irony is that their sense of ego or their sense of self is surrounding this belief that they are selfless. So it's their sense of pride comes from the fact that they're selfless, and the reality is that is not selfless, that is very selfish. So by trying to make everything about you, it could be you, it could be a certain person, it could be other people, doesn't even exactly matter what it is. It doesn't even have to be a person or people. It can be even an ideal, it can be a concept, it can be a belief system, it can be anything. But the type 2 disconnects their sense of self in such a way that it's not about them at all. And like I said, it's actually not truly selfless, that you gain the sense of pride from having no sense of self. And it's very unhealthy to have no sense of self. You need to have a sense of self in order not to self-destruct. So if this is something you're struggling with, then you are probably type 2. Some people, or like an anxious attachment style, some people are like overly focused on a romantic partner, and that entire life revolves around that partner. That is not always necessarily a type 2 thing. It also depends on how you interact with that partner. So for example, a type 8 who has a romantic partner, maybe a sexual instinct first, their entire life, when they're unhealthy, will also revolve around their partner, and they will be obsessed, and on the surface it looks like it's all for them. But the way how they will express the unhealthy Enneagram type will usually be in the form of everything has to go their way. So they will try to mold or control their partner in such a way that they have to conform to what the type 8 wants. Oftentimes, especially with like type 8 males, males who have a strong type 8 connection, a lot of them will start controlling their partner, like, oh, you cannot dress like this, you cannot have this kind of job, you cannot do this, you have to do that, like kind of micromanaging in this way. This is like an unhealthy type 8 thing. It's still overly focused on their partner, which is unhealthy, but the way how it expresses itself is very different. So for Enneagram type 2, the 2 actually overly focuses on what the other person seems to want and delivering it to that person. So like having no sense of self. It can also overlap with type 9 sometimes, because type 9s, like I said, they say everything is fine. So with type 9, they also might act as if they have no needs. So there are unfortunately certain similarities that sometimes seem to overlap, but there's still a distinction here. Type 9s, at the end of the day, their focus is not truly on the other person or on the outside. Their end focus is still on themselves and their internal experience, which is the very opposite way of type 2, because type 2s have a more extroverted focus, type 9s have an introverted focus. In my opinion, all 9s are introverts. They're withdrawn types. And the thing of everything is fine, it's still directed towards the 9 itself. The 9 just doesn't want to feel upset. The 9 doesn't want to feel hurt, upset, have any uncomfortable emotions. With type 2s oftentimes, they don't really mind uncomfortable emotions, especially if it's in favor of the other person. So you see the difference? Everything must be in order. So this is type 1. Type 1, when they're unhealthy, are going to be obsessed with everything has to be in order. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to mean that everything has to be clean, for example, although it can mean that. It's not necessarily just about that, but everything in their life must go according to their own personal rules. So type 1s will typically have some kind of rules in their mind, some rule system. So things they are allowed to do and not allowed to do. And everything has to be in that order. Otherwise, everything is, falling apart, the horrible, whatever. So yeah, when type 1s are in this unhealthy mindset, like I said, everything has to be in order. And if it's not in order, something is wrong and their life is going to be miserable. So unhealthy ones with this mindset, they cannot allow themselves to make any mistakes, but this is more in the realm of that it's out of order. They cannot do anything that would be deemed chaotic, that would be just for fun, for example. They don't allow themselves to have fun. They don't allow themselves to let loose. Everything is very tight, very constricted. Like I said, they have this very rigid kind of modus operandi. So anything outside of that framework is not gonna fly. So oftentimes they have if they actually follow what they preach, then they will be very rigid as well. Like they will hold themselves back a lot from having fun in their life. They won't allow themselves to just let loose, just relax. It will be very constricted, and they will try to live a life that they deem to be morally superior, or just correct in their own head. But other type 1s, they tend, like other ones, especially if it's not their main type or if it's just a wing or something, they often do more things that go against that framework, that are more wrong, and then they tend to try to suppress that, or they actually shame themselves for not complying to what they deem to be the rules. So this is very much an unhealthy type 1 thing. Also, everything must be in order. Nothing can ever be flexible. Nothing can ever be discussed on the spot. It all has to follow those rigid rules, and they have to apply in every certain situation. And sometimes that's just not how life is, how life works. The next one is everything is better than nothing. I also almost included everything is possible, but this doesn't necessarily apply to all type 7s. This is type 7. So everything is possible tends to apply more to, in the Jungian system, ENFP, ENTPs, when they are 7s with extra intuition. But actually what applies to all 7s, everything is better than nothing. It's this kind of mindset where you don't want to settle on anything. So it can be anything in life. It can be relationships, it can be careers, it can be ideas, it can be concepts, it can be anything really. It can be, I don't know, even travel destinations. It can be, I don't know, choosing a certain food in the store. 7 is just obsessed with options, with freedom, and they really struggle with limiting themselves. And you can see how that is actually the exact opposite to type 1. Type 1, when they are unhealthy, they overly limit themselves, or they try to overly limit the outside world. Whereas type 7 is doing the opposite. Type 7 doesn't want to limit themselves at all. They also don't want to limit the world around them at all. Obviously that has issues as well, right? Like if type 7 is not willing to limit themselves to anything, they cannot accomplish excellence in anything, right? They often want to be the jack of all trades, and some of them are able to do that. I mean, it kind of goes along a bit with their personality. They're extroverts and they tend to have a proficiency at doing several things. But still, even if you are able to do several things or whatever, you still need to go deep with at least one thing in order for it to come to fruition. Okay, next one. Everything must be unique. So this is the trap of type 4. Type 4, when they're average or unhealthy, will typically think that everything has to be unique, either about themselves or about life in general. The flip side is that everything is ordinary, and they just cannot handle it. They just cannot accept being ordinary. They have this obsession with being extraordinary. So they have to be extraordinary in everything and have to be unique or special in some way. And this is not the same as type 3. Type 3 might also want to be out of the norm or above average. With 3, yeah, the focus is more on being above average. 3s want to be seen as great, right? As successful, great, awesome. With type 4, it's not really necessarily about being above average. It's more about not being average, being out of the norm, being unique. So when it's unhealthy and destructive, often it manifests even in ways how type 4s are, let's say, overly melancholic, overly depressed the whole time, and they identify themselves with being that, and they feel like it makes them more unique. So a type 4 is more inclined to do something, follow something, or present themselves in their image in a way that is out of the norm, oftentimes even going against the mainstream, just to be unique. Because even if you try to be above average, you're still orientating yourself alongside what is considered average. Type 4s totally want to go against that. They totally want to be outside of the whole average conversation. Okay, last but not least, everything must be thought out first. It's kind of similar actually to type 1s sometimes, that they don't seem to live life enough. So fives don't really limit themselves based on what they think are the rules or what is proper or what is orderly, but they limit themselves in the way how they are overly focused on figuring everything out first mentally. First they have to follow the logic, create mental constructs, theories, models, everything, or just think about it, but then not put in any action whatsoever. So of course 5s often they do have a personality type in the Jungian system that is intuitive, and I would actually argue that all 5s are INTJs and INTPs in the Jungian system, because they are introverts, they are logical, and they're intuitive. So oftentimes their area of expertise is actually something abstract, and especially in the case of INTPs who have introvert thinking, extrovert intuition, yeah, it is abstract, and they don't necessarily want to make it a thing in the real world. It can just be a concept, let's say. But that does not mean that a type 5 with that personality can just sit on it and just think about it and then never, for example, never share it with anyone or never put it down to paper. You know, like you still, even though you might deal with an abstract subject or something theoretical, if, let's say, you never apply it in any way whatsoever, or if you never share it with the world, then it's kind of useless. So this is the trap that type 5s fall into. They're very arrogant, and they're also going to start thinking, oh yeah, no one's thinking about it as much as I am thinking about it. But it kind of depends. It can kind of overlap also just with unhealthy introverted thinking in general. But yeah, this is generally the issue of type 5. If that's you, then you might be dealing with a type 5 issue. We all have a main type, like a main negative fixation, but we can probably relate to the other ones in differing levels. Sometimes we go through life and based on certain problems or situations we encounter, we might relate to another fixation, another type more, but it's for a limited amount of time. Sometimes it can even take years if you don't fix the issue of that Enneagram type. The main mindset, the main issues, the main being that you have is going to be based on your main type. Alright, so now the question of course is, how do you fix this, and yeah, what's the light at the end of the tunnel? I'm not going to talk about how to fix it in this video, but I can help you with fixing it. Just go to my website attribution.com/services. I have helped my clients deal with these limiting beliefs, with these falsehoods that are very much based on their Enneagram type, and I've helped them I've helped them create a more positive mindset and living a life that is not just constricted to that kind of limiting belief. They have been able to see the other side of the coin and create a lifestyle that is still more fulfilling to them despite this tendency. And I've done the same for myself as well. Alright, I hope you have a good day and see you in the next video. Bye!